What's up, Cardfighters? Ryan here from Vanguard Central, bringing you a brand new Eradicator Dragonic Descendant deck profile.
Stand up, Vanguard!
Starting with our grade 3s, we are playing 4 copies of Dragonic Descendant. So Descendant in this deck is going to be our main boss for the Eradicators, simply because of that early game possibility just to kind of push cards out of their hand. The best thing about it is because, you know, obviously you don't want him to hit, or you actually want him to hit, if that makes sense, because if he doesn't hit, you get to get that sweet restand, get an additional crit and a second swing. The cost is actually pretty large just because you have to discard 3 cards and it's only a twin drive unit, but the fact is it adds a lot of pressure early game as well, because we do run the Limit Break Enabler. And our next backup grade 2, or grade 3, sorry, is the Eradicator Tempest Bolt Dragon. Tempest Bolt is just a really nice power-up unit. If they plan not to call units to rear guard, you can go ahead and get some sweet power-up on the Vanguard pretty much early game. Usually you don't want to be on him though, because his counterblast 3 cost is pretty hefty to blow the board, but he's still really a cool card to run just because of his second ability. Another backup we got, guys, is the Eradicator Gauntlet Buster Dragon. Gauntlet Buster's there just if we know that we can pop some units on the board. He's there to get us some additional crits early game if we know that they don't have a perfect card, since he does get pretty beefy as well. And our another backup grade 3 is Riton, just for some Descendant support. Basically making our Vanguard a little bit more powerful on those swings with Descendant. So you can push rear guard sides, and then also on top of that, you can swing and retire him and get extra 5k power to Vanguard. Just so that if they, you know, want to let it hit, they're going to have to force out a little bit more cards. Starting with our grade 2s, we got 4 copies of Zuitan. Zuitan is basically the unflipper of this deck. He's a solid grade 2 Bride, just because we're running Linshu also as our starter, so you're going to make that Linshu starter free, and you get some extra soul as well. Next, we got 4 copies of Chatara, obviously a staple in any Narukami deck just because of his ability to get some extra hand power and apply a lot of pressure to the Vanguard, being an 11k swinger on its own. And then we got 4 copies of the new Eradicator Dragonic Death Sight. He got kind of an upgrade, not really. Basically a somewhat cheaper cost, but you need to have a Descendant Vanguard in order to get that pop. His second ability does come in handy also if you want to pressure a lot of early game or rushing, and if they want to counterattack you, you can go ahead and kill some units also on your grade 3 ride, which is pretty neat. Moving on to our grade 1s, we got 4 copies of Eradicator Vanguard Gold. We kind of want to keep the Eradicators and the sub-clan name going in here. It'd be nice to play on flippers, but I feel like the Eradicator name is just a little bit more important. Next, we got 3 copies of Eradicator Shuki. Basically, get some extra powers, simply because we're going to be retiring some units on their board with a little bit of our units, so we get some extra, power on our sides, which is really neat. Following that, we got 2 copies of Seobo, which is a new set, from the new set, sorry. Basically, when something with Descendant swings on your Vanguard circle, you're going to go ahead and get an additional 4k to another unit and itself. So basically, on double swings with Descendant, you're going to get 8k to itself and 8k somewhere else, which is actually really nice for the cost of counterblast 1. And then our next backup grade 1 is going to be the Draco Kid for the Limit Break Enabler. This applies a lot of early game pressure, especially for riding grade 3 if they're still like grade 2, if you're at Descendant. So if you kind of rush early, they're going to be forced to either guard or no guard that Vanguard, which is pretty scary. And then we got 2 Rising Phoenix, because we're going to build up a little bit of soul with the putting into soul for Descendant or Dragon Death Scythe, and then also hitting with Zuitan and stuff like that. Moving on to our triggers, it's kind of all over the place, but we want to run a lot of crits because they're basically going to be pressured to force to guard our Vanguard, force to no guard our Vanguard, I mean. And so we're running basically like 11 crit because we're pretty mean. So we got the extra Goro for just help us with the strides. If you have to call it to a Guardian Circle, you can't, which is unfortunate, but the Generation Break 1 skill actually does come in handy a little bit. And then we got 1 Dragon Mage draw trigger because it's actually our friend's deck, and he's like the sack master, so he actually hits this like all the time. It's really annoying. And we got the 4 Sayable heals because we want a G-Guard and you want to heal and stay alive. And our starter is going to be Linshu, Lynchu is obviously the best starter for the Eradicator build, just because you can kill a grade 1 or less rather than a 0, just like the other. I forgot his name. But Lynchu obviously is the best. There you go. Saishin is one that pops here. So thank you, Cardfight wife. So basically, Lynchu is going to be that gnarly starter. Really good combos with Zuitan just because it makes it free, where you get to put into Soul, you get extra Soul as well, and you can drop a Rising Phoenix for extra draws. Moving on to our G zone, we are playing the 4 copies of Zillion. He's basically the Descendant Stride. It's a pretty gnarly card just because it's free, or you know, at least the cost to pay his cost is free. So as a first stride, they're going to be forced to guard this, or I mean no guard it, which is really nice because if they do guard it, you get to pull off his restanding skill, which is like pretty cheap also. You don't have to discard 3 Eradicators, so you're set on that, but you just have to counterblast 1 Soul Blast 2. And if you're riding to grade 3 first or striding first, not at all hard to do. And running with all this crits being them to no guard, you're gonna, you know, triple drive is pretty scary. And then next we're following that with the 4 Voltage, because Voltage is all around a good card. We're using this really for some pressure and also for some boards. What's it called? Like board presence to get the extra 3k power, since we are going to bind stuff at least a little bit with Chadara if he does hit. But always a good backup to have Voltage in there. We got 2 Conquest Dragon. You can also flip it, run the 4 Conquest instead. Totally up to you. But the Conquest does help a lot since it's free. If they don't want to keep a front row, you can go ahead and get some pretty big numbers on that. And then we got 1 Finish Blow Dragon. Finish Blow is just like such a good guy, at least for this deck, because if you do end up riding that Gauntlet Buster, you get a free retire off it, and then also his skill to get, you know, the on place counterblast 1. Excuse me, I love you. And also his skill just to get the additional 5k and crit, make him really powerful. And we got a backup of VMAX. The VMAX is there because we are running the 4 copies of Voltage, so we end up flipping that. We can go into here and get a nice board right. The Thunderstrike 5 is pretty hard in this deck, but at least the second ability is pretty easy. Moving on to G Zone, we got 2 copies of Vitra for extra shield. We got the 1 Bulwark Dragon, just because if we do end up getting some Thunderstrike, which I don't know how, I guess if you're gonna hit each other like 3 times, you can get some nice retire. And then we got a Dismal as well, just to, you know, save some rears or stop decoys. So anyways guys, that was it for our deck profile. Thanks again to our friend Jason for letting us borrow it and showing it here on the channel. So like I always say guys, let me know down below what you guys think of the deck profile, if you want to make any changes or what you think is better. I know it's kind of funky, but you know, that's what it is. So anyways guys, like our videos, comment down below if you have any questions, and subscribe for more content. Vanguard Central out.